A couple weeks ago, I visited the Concorde at the Bristol Aerospace Museum, which is located on the site of the old Filton Airport. This Concorde was the last Concorde to fly back in 2003 when it made its final flight from London Heathrow to Bristol Filton, but flew supersonic down to Spain and back before finally landing in Bristol. The Concorde is one of, if not the most iconic aircraft in all of history, and I love it. So when LEGO released this LEGO Concorde, I couldn't help myself, I had to get this thing. And so in today's video, we're going to be building and reviewing this LEGO set. I'll be building this LEGO set in time-lapse form, and while I do that, I'll be going over some of the information and history about the Concorde, and then at the end, we're going to come back here and we are going to review this LEGO set. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and start the time-lapse. Concorde came out of the giant boom of innovation that started as a result of World War II. For example, the British company Avro went from the first flight of their Lancaster in 1941 to the first flight of their Vulcan in 1952. That's just 11 years. These are two aircraft that look nothing alike. Innovation recently, on the other hand, has gone from the B-2 Spirit in 1989 to the B-21 Raider in 2023, which is 34 years. These new bombers are still marvels of innovation, don't get me wrong, but to go from the Lancaster to the Vulcan in just a decade is crazy. After the war, this aerospace technology moved from military use to commercial use, which led to very successful aircraft like the Boeing 707 and de Havilland Comet. While these aircraft were amazing, Britain, France, the Soviet Union, and the United States all looked towards supersonic transport as the future of commercial flight. And so in the early 1950s, these countries started developing their own supersonic transports, which were known for short as SSTs. The UK and France joined together in 1962, and the first model of this new SST was put on display to the public for the first time in 1963 in Bristol, England. However, under this model had the name Concorde, but not the way we spell it today. This model was spelled C-O-N-C-O-R-D. Concorde is a word which means agreement, which symbolized what the UK and France had. They had an agreement to build this new aircraft together. However, in French, Concorde is spelt with an E, and in English it's spelt without an E. This proved to be quite a controversial issue in the early days of the Concorde program, but in the end it was French President Charles de Gaulle who advocated for the E being on the end, and that's how we spell it to this day. After a Labour Party victory in 1964, it was announced that the UK would be leaving the Concorde program, but after a lot of rejection, this was then reversed 2 months later. In 1969, the first Concorde took to the skies, which of course was also the year a man landed on the moon. The Boeing 747 flew for the first time, the Top Gun Naval School was established, and the first vertical takeoff fixed-wing aircraft entered service, with the RAF of course being the Harrier, so all in all a great year for aviation. Originally over 200 Concordes were planned, and airlines from all around the world started ordering the aircraft, like Pan Am, Continental, American Airlines, TWA, Middle East Airlines, Qantas, Air India, Japan Airlines, Sabena, Eastern, United, Braniff, Lufthansa, Air Canada, the CAAC, and Iran Air. 2 Concorde factories were opened, one in Toulouse, France, which is of course where most modern Airbus aircraft are built to this day, and one in Bristol, England. While Bristol Filton Airport is now closed, Airbus still have a large headquarters in Filton where they produce parts for the A400M and parts for around 50% of the UK civil helicopter fleet. Later in 1976, the Concorde entered commercial service with both British Airways and Air France. Due to the 1973 market crash, rising unit costs, and cheaper and more efficient alternatives like the Boeing 747 and DC-10, all other Concorde orders were then cancelled, and in the end, 20 Concordes were built. 10 in the UK, 10 in France, 2 from each country were used as prototypes, and then a further 1 from each country became airline testbed aircraft, leaving British Airways and Air France with 7 commercially used Concordes each. The Soviets operated their Tupolev 144 from 1975 to 1978, and the United States had 2 attempts with their Boeing 2707 and the Lockheed L2000, but in the end, Concorde proved to be the only long-term SST, entering service in 1976 and not leaving service service until 2003. The Concorde had a top speed of Mach 2.02 or 1,550 miles an hour. The Royal Air Force used departing Concordes as intercepting practice for their QRA operations, but on multiple occasions these intercepts failed as the Concorde would outrun certain types of fighter aircraft. The Concorde has also spent more time supersonic than every other aircraft in history combined, and it even had the ability to supercruise. Supercruising is maintaining supersonic speed without the use of an afterburner, and it's actually a pretty hard task. It was pioneered by the English Electric Lightning, and today only 4 types of aircraft have the ability to supercruise: the F-22 Raptor, the Eurofighter Typhoon, the Dassault Rafale, and the Saab Gripen. The engines used on the Concorde were the famous Rolls-Royce Olympus 593 engines. The Olympus engines were also used on the Avro Vulcan, and a maritime version of the Olympus was also used on the Royal Navy's Invincible class aircraft carrier, which was decommissioned in 2014. Other than British Airways and Air France, 2 other airlines also operated or co-operated the Concorde, those being Braniff and Singapore Airlines. Braniff operated the Concorde from Washington Dulles to Dallas Fort Worth. The way this would work is a British Airways or Air France Concorde would fly into Washington Dulles. It would then be flown with a Braniff flight crew and American registration to Dallas and back before then returning to either London or Paris. Singapore Airlines have also co-operated a Concorde with British Airways using a hybrid livery where one side of the aircraft was painted in the regular British Airways colours, and on the other side it would be painted into the Singapore Airlines colours. The Concorde is just such an amazing aircraft with such a rich history and so many cool and unique things to note. But with that, my build is beginning to wrap up, and so we will now take a look at the newly completed LEGO Concorde. And here we have the final completed LEGO Concorde. This cost me £180, which depending on how you look at it can be good, can be bad. For me, coming from the world of die-cast models, that is actually really good. I have the 1 to 200 British Airways Concorde, which is probably about 30 centimeters long. That cost me just over £100, so this coming in at £180 and it's almost a meter long, that is really good. And as well with this, you get some entertainment value out of it, because of course this took me 5 hours to build, I think it was. So that's 5 hours of entertainment included in that price. In terms of the actual model itself, this thing looks really, really cool. Now, of course, it's Lego, so it is kind of a novelty. It's not super detailed. It's not super realistic. Lego are known for being aerodynamic, but it is still really cool. Having that Lego set feel to it kind of has that novelty to it as well. And there's so many interactive bits about this this model. For example, you can lower the nose, you can lower the wheels by twisting the tail here. You can see them coming out, and this is probably my favorite configuration, with the nose down and the wheels down, like it's just coming into land, like that. And then of course you have the interior piece. So this bit comes off here, and you can see it's got some seats and some toilets. That's a really cool little feature. And then as well you have the split rudders on the Concorde. They swivel like that, and then you've got the ailerons on the back of the wing. Not flaps, of course, the Concorde didn't actually have flaps, but you've got all the ailerons that go up and down. And so you can display it in so many different ways. And overall, I think this set is just a really, really cool one. The livery is semi-fictitious. I believe it's based off one of the demonstrator liveries that was on one of the French Concordes, but it's not exactly how it was in real life. It's slightly fictitious, as I said, but overall I think it looks really good. I don't think that takes away from this model at all. I still think it looks really nice with the red stripe down the middle, the blue on the tail, and overall when you look at all the Concordes, no matter what livery they're in, they're almost always completely white. I think with the exception of the Pepsi livery, all the Concordes are mainly white. Of course that's to help with the heat of flying really, really fast. So yeah, overall I don't think it looks too bad. That's in terms of the livery, and in terms of the actual model itself and the shape. I mean, they've got the wing shape down perfect, and everything else just looks really, really good. Of course, the nose is something really tricky to get right, but they managed it somehow. The tail looks good. It just looks really, really good. So I would highly recommend this set for an aviation enthusiast or Concorde enthusiast that also likes Lego. So with that concludes my first ever Lego review on this channel. And with that, I want to thank you very much for watching today's video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.